Question 101. Charles took a listing for a home. The owner told Charles over the phone that the property was in good shape, and Charles never inspected it. The owner showed a buyer the property, and the buyer decided to open an escrow with the owner, which then closed a few months later. Which of these facts are true? Even though the owner made a statement about the property's condition, Charles, as the listing agent, has a duty to conduct a reasonable inspection of the property and disclose any material facts to potential buyers. He cannot simply rely on the owner's representations. Failing to inspect and disclose known or reasonably discoverable material defects is a violation of his professional duties and real estate license laws. It doesn't matter if the owner made a statement or if the buyer asked specific questions. The broker has an independent duty to investigate and disclose. Question 102. Express conditions include conditions, such as A. Condition subsequent B. Full performance C. Condition precedent D. Both A and C. Correct answer is D. Both A and C. Express conditions are explicitly stated in a contract. They can be either condition precedent, an event or action that must occur before a party is obligated to perform their part of the contract. For example, a contract to buy a house might be conditional upon the buyer obtaining financing. Condition subsequent, an event or action that, if it occurs after a party has already become obligated to perform, will excuse that party from further performance. For example, a contract for continued employment might be conditioned on the employee maintaining a certain professional license. Full performance is not a condition, it's the fulfillment of a contractual obligation. Question 103. For real estate professionals, farming refers to A. Dividing work time into seasons, seeking listings in the summer, selling in the fall, conducting open houses and going door to door in the spring. B. Targeting prospects in a specific geographical area. C. Both A and BD selling property in a rural area. Correct answer is B. Targeting prospects in a specific geographical area. Farming in real estate refers to the practice of focusing marketing and prospecting efforts on a specific geographic area. Agents farm a neighborhood by building relationships with residents, becoming a familiar face, and establishing themselves as the local real estate expert. This can involve activities like sending out newsletters, attending community events, and door knocking. The goal is to generate leads and listings within that targeted area. Question 104. The following are required elements of a valid contract, except A. Lawful objective. B. Legal capacity to contract. C. Written. D. Offer and acceptance. Correct answer is C. Written. While some contracts must be in writing to be enforceable under the statute of frauds, like real estate sales contracts, not all contracts are required to be in writing to be valid. Oral contracts can be perfectly valid and binding in many situations, as long as the other essential elements are present. Lawful objective. The purpose of the contract must be legal. A contract for an illegal activity is void. Legal capacity to contract. The parties entering into the contract must have the legal ability to do so. Egg, not minors, not legally incompetent. Offer and acceptance. There must be a clear offer by one party and an unqualified acceptance of that offer by the other party, creating a meeting of the minds. Question 105. Which of the following is a characteristic of a hybrid loan? A. Only interest payments are made during the term of the loan. B. The interest rate is fixed during the term of the loan. C. The interest rate is fixed for an initial of 3, 5, 7, or 10-year period, then tied to an economic index that adjusts yearly. D. The interest rate is tied to the prime rate for the first half of the loan's term, then to the Dow Jones Industrial Average for the remainder. Correct answer is C. The interest rate is fixed for an initial of 3, 5, 7, or 10-year period, then tied to an economic index that adjusts yearly. In a hybrid loan, the interest rate is fixed for an opening period of 3, 5, 7, or 10 years. Then, the interest rate is tied to an economic index that adjusts every year. This index could be something like the Secured Overnight Financing Rate, SOFR, or the prime rate. The fixed rate period can vary in length, commonly 3, 5, 7, or 10 years. After this initial period, the interest rate will adjust, usually annually, based on the fluctuations of the index it's tied to. The hybrid mortgage has the combined features of a fixed-rate loan and the adjustable-rate loan, hence the Question 106. If a borrower fails to make his monthly mortgage payment, a late payment fee can be imposed. A. 1 day after the deadline. B. 10 days after the deadline. C. 1 month after the deadline. D. No late payment fee is allowable. Correct answer is B. 10 days after the deadline. While the exact number of days can vary depending on the specific loan agreement, a common grace period for mortgage payments before a late fee is imposed is around 10 to 15 days. It's usually not 1 day, and it's definitely not a full month. The mortgage documents will specify the exact grace period and the amount of the late fee. Question 107. If a broker discovers ambiguous or difficult to understand language in a contract being negotiated, he should A. Attempt to exploit any discrepancies for the benefit of his client. B. Settle the discrepancies after executing the contract. C. Settle the discrepancies before executing the contract. D. Abandon the transaction. Correct answer is C. Settle the discrepancies before executing the contract. In the best interests of both the buyer and the seller, the broker should try to resolve ambiguities prior to executing the contract. If they find ambiguous or unclear language in a contract, they should address and resolve those issues before the contract is signed. This prevents misunderstandings, disputes, and potential legal problems down the road. Trying to exploit discrepancies or waiting until after signing is unethical and potentially harmful to the client. Abandoning the transaction is an extreme measure and usually not necessary. Clarifying the language is the proper course of action. Question 108. If a purchaser asks the listing broker for permission to move into the property before the sale closes, the broker should A. Prepare a temporary lease for the buyer. B. Allow the buyer to move in. C. Allow the buyer to move if consent is obtained from the owner. D. It is impossible under any circumstances for the buyer to move in before the sale closes. Correct answer is C. Allow the buyer to move if consent is obtained from the owner. Since the property remains in the seller's possession until the sale closes, the seller would have to provide permission for the buyer to move in. The broker cannot simply allow the buyer to move in. A temporary lease agreement, option A, might be a good idea to protect both parties, but it's not the best way to handle this situation. The key is that the owner must agree, and the broker should facilitate that agreement and ensure proper documentation, whether it's a formal lease or some other written agreement outlining the terms of the early occupancy. It is possible for a buyer to move in before closing, but it requires the owner's permission. Question 109. Which of the following is not appurtenant to the land? A. Trees. B. Lighthouse. C. Commercial signs. D. Fences. Correct answer is C. Commercial signs. Something that is attached or affixed to the land, either by nature or man, is said to be appurtenant to it. While trees and fences are clearly attached, and a lighthouse is a separate structure, the key distinction with commercial signs is their status as trade fixtures. Trade fixtures are items attached by a tenant for business purposes and are generally considered personal property, not fixtures appurtenant to the land. Question 110. The following can be compared to a sandwich. A. Purchase contract. B. Sales contract. C. Oral contract. D. Subleasing contract. Correct answer is D. Subleasing contract. A sublease is like a sandwich. The original lease is the bread. The sublessor, the original tenant, is the filling, and the sublessee is the other slice of bread. The original tenant, now sublessor, leases the property to a new tenant, sublessee. But the original lease between the landlord and the original tenant remains in effect. So there's a layer of leasing happening within the original lease agreement. It's also called a sandwich